here to talk to you about Storm Quest the game. We're on episode 5, so let's get started. Talk a little bit more about what Project Dome is, and we'll talk about the two different games modes that are in the game. Specifically, we'll focus on the build mode a little bit. We'll talk more in depth about the storm mode, and then I'll give you an update to the weather system and how it relates to the storm mode, and then give you a hint about what's going on in the next episode. So what is Project Dome? Well, Project Dome is a real-time strategy game. It's not a first-person or a third-person or type game or a role-playing game. It's a real-time strategy game. You play different roles during this game. You'll play one as a manager, where you organize and construct buildings, you build vehicles, you research technologies, things of that nature. That's kind of in the build mode, and I'll go into a little bit of details about that. Then you have like a forecaster position where you'll be using your buildings and equipment to actually forecast the weather conditions to make an outlook, a watch, and issue warnings. You'll be a warning coordinator where you'll take all the communication for your virtual storm chasers, your weather radar, your observers, law enforcement, public, media, and you'll issue warnings based upon that. And then as an emergency coordinator where you'll alert and organize the emergency managers of upcoming dangers and to where damage has already taken place. So that kind of gives you an overview of what basic elements are within. The game is broken up into two game modes. There's the build mode where you actually do your constructing, where you'll construct buildings. You use your tech tree to begin to explore different technologies, and you begin to place your buildings and equipment, and also begin to generate vehicles and things of that sort. Then the storm mode, and that's where all the action takes place, and that's where you actually begin the process of forecasting. You issue outlooks, you communicate with emergency managers, law enforcement about the dangers of where you think the severe weather is going to happen. You position your storm chasers, your observers, and you continue to monitor the conditions, the weather conditions, where you will issue watches and eventually warnings and so forth. And also during this mode, you would also alert emergency management to where possible damage has already occurred and people need to seek help and so forth. So a little bit more about build mode. Build mode is where you're going, like I stated before, in this mode you're going to construct key buildings such as forecast offices. And understand that forecast offices have a limited range over the map, so they won't be able to cover the entire map. It'll cover a certain region, so you'll need to be creating several of those buildings. Weather balloon stations or weather balloon sheds where you actually will launch weather balloons into the atmosphere, radar domes, other kinds of technologies, buildings that will create vehicles, special vehicles that you will use, also buildings to maintain those vehicles and such. You'll have a tech tree where you'll use to explore new technologies and enhancements that will help you with forecasting severe weather down the road and detection of that, as well as vehicles. You'll purchase vehicles, you'll maintain your vehicles, you'll sell vehicles, and use them to research and also chase storms. But I'll get into more detail in this next episode. But in this, I want to look more at the storm mode and get into more in-depth look at this. So let's first look at the forecast stage. In this stage of storm mode, if storms are not already taking place at this point, you'll have an opportunity to check your weather stations and observer vehicles to try and retrieve key weather data to figure out where the potential for severe weather may be occurring. You'll have to do this because you won't be given any information. You won't be told, oh, there's a high risk for severe weather that day. You'll have to determine that yourself. So there'll be a training process to give you key elements of what to look for. Then once you gather that information, your job will be to issue outlooks to emergency managers, local law enforcement, and to the media so that they will alert the public of the potential danger that's coming up. Then also you'll want to position your chasers, your virtual chasers and observers into the area where you think the most dangerous weather is going to happen so you can be ready to issue warnings and so forth. Stage after that within the storm mode would be the watch state. Obviously, again, if there's no storms already occurring. This is where you'll continue to monitor your weather conditions and watch your radars and satellites to make sure to see where storms are beginning to form and develop. At that point, you'll want to issue a watch as fast as you possibly can so you can alert those people within that watch of when and where severe weather might occur. Again, you'll want to move your virtual chasers and observers to get them in a better position so that they can give you the most accurate information on the ground about where storms are beginning to form and what they're actually producing. Once storms get into the right place, you'll move into the warning stage. And that's where you'll monitor weather radar. And again, weather radars will cover a small region of your map. So you'll want to have multiple weather radar domes across your area. You can also utilize certain vehicles as mobile units and position them in an area if you don't have a radar dome in that spot at that point. You'll want to monitor your ham radio reports. So you'll be receiving radio reports from law enforcement, the public, the media. All this information will be coming into you to help you make a decision on whether to issue a warning for the storm that's in the area. And then if conditions are right, you'll issue the warning. And you'll drag a polygon across the map, and people within that region will be alerted. Sirens will go off, and weather radios will go off in those regions at that point. All of that's done, in a storm has passed on, you'll move into the emergency stage, and that's where you will alert emergency management teams to go to where the damage has occurred so that they can help people in those areas and so forth. And then finally, once everything is over, you'll go into the report stage, which is kind of the end of storm mode. Well, you'll review reports of severe weather. You'll make a damage assessment, or you'll receive damage assessments. You'll review your research data that's accumulated, which you'll use to help with your tech tree down the road. And you'll get a final tally of your accuracy points on your forecast, your warnings that are issued, and what kind of grant money that you'll receive based upon that information. So that kind of gives you a high-level view of how storm mode looks. We'll get into more details in each one of those areas as we move into it. But how does that relate to where we're at right now? As we stated in episode 4, we're currently working on the game core itself. So we actually have not gotten into those areas yet, but that kind of gives you an idea of where we're going. We showed you last episode about the traffic system, the AI traffic system, and then we also talked a little bit about how we're working on the weather system. The components of the game engine concerning with the weather system include the general weather setup, the probabilities of tornado, hail, and wind, and the parameters and ingredients in the time system. What we're currently at right now, and what we completed, is we've completed the general weather setup. So basically we know now, based upon our program, what the setup's going to be for the day. We'll also know what the probabilities of tornadoes, hail, and wind damage are going to be during that time period. So based upon the parameters and the ingredients, it will let us know in advance what the engine's going to generate during that time. Now, of course, you're not going to know any of this at the very beginning. You're going to have to deduce this information as it goes on. Right now, what we're currently working on is the placement of those ingredients and parameters in relation to the actual weather setup. So we know where the high point or hotspot is going to be on the map. The engine now creates that. Now we're positioning that information, and we'll begin to build maps based upon those positions. How does this relate to storm mode? Well, as a forecaster, your job, if you look at this little image on the right here, it shows you kind of the hot spot of where severe weather is going to occur based upon certain levels. Now, this is not actually what would be seen in the game. This kind of gives you an idea of what we're trying to do within our concept design. Your job is where you position your forecast office, your equipment, your observers, your vehicles. Wherever you position those, your job is to try and move those into a location to find out where the severe weather hotspot's going to be. And based upon that, you make a forecast. So that is what your responsibility is going to be at this point in the storm mode. As a forecaster, you'll deduct, if your weather stations are located throughout that map, you'll determine, okay, it looks like in the northwest corner, according to this map, the potential for severe weather is a lot lower because the dew points and the temperatures are lower. But further towards the southeast of the map, where the hot spot is, you're going to see conditions that are more ripe for severe weather. And that will help you to deduce where the severe weather is going to occur. At that point, as a forecaster, you'll want to start moving your virtual chasers and observers and research vehicles into those areas so that you can have an idea of what's going on and you can make better warnings and watches and outlooks at that time. So that kind of gives you a high level view of what we're working on and what we've been working on over this last few months, and specifically in the game engine. What we're going to talk about next episode, which will be on Friday, June 5th, is we'll go into a little more detail about the build mode and what kind of buildings will be available, what kind of technologies will be available, and how that process will happen. We'll talk a little bit more about the status of the weather system and how it's progressing. We'll talk a little bit more about the storm system and how storms form and how they'll begin to grow within the environment. And then we'll also hopefully have an update on the website. We've been in the process of developing that at this point in time. Hopefully we'll be able to show you a little bit more information. If you have any questions, we love to hear from you. Join our Discord. We love to interact with people there. We not only talk about StormQuest the game, but we also talk about real weather events and other technologies that are out there. Thank you for watching this episode, and we look forward to talking to you soon. Have a great weekend.